Welcome to Manhwa Nirwana. Let's dive straight into the story. Our story starts at Valdar Academy. An announcement is being made by Valdar Academy graduation representative Michael Foxon. He comes forward and addresses everyone, and he says hello to everyone. I'm Michael Foxon, graduate of the second class of Valdar Academy. Then we see the protagonist of this story. He is sitting on a branch of a tree, and he is saying, "Hard to believe the guy who used to stumble over simple greetings is standing here now. Well, from here, he looks like a talking cotton swab or something. But really, no one else has hair that white except Michael. You've grown so much, Michael. Not that I actually taught you anything worthwhile as your homeroom teacher? There were countless events over those years. It was so hard to stay in character beside the protagonist of a fantasy novel. But now I've completed the main quests. Goodbye to 3 years over the top character settings. Now begins my long-awaited slow life." Michael Foxon says, "But I owe it to someone worthy of being called the true mentor, Professor Chris." By the way, the name of the protagonist is Chris Doden. And Michael Foxon has just taken the name of that person, due to which he gets shocked, and he said, "Why is my name coming up?" And Michael Foxon further says, "If I hadn't met you, I wouldn't be who I am today. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I was weak and pitiful, and for guiding me. I know you have your reasons for not being able to stay at the academy any longer. So please, give me a chance to repay you. I'll follow you for the rest of my life." Chris Doden is in great shock and says, "No. You're the protagonist. Your story is just getting started. The whole world is waiting for you. Why? Do you have any idea how many scouts came just to recruit you?" Michael Foxon further says, "And it's not just me. All of us, my classmates, trained by your hand, we have gathered here for one purpose, to follow Chris Doden. We all 5 of us, pledge our loyalty to Chris Doden." Chris Doden gets stunted and says, "Wait, what is this situation? How did this come to this? I'm an ordinary, powerless person from another world who can't even cast a single spell. How do I mess up the character settings?" Chris Doden tells his story and he says, "This all started before I ever became a teacher at Valdar Academy, right after the car accident. As my consciousness faded, something suddenly appeared in front of me. A system window is opened in front of him, main quest. The Earth gods wish a new life." Chris Doden looking at the system window in surprise, and he thinks, "What the heck am I seeing? Am I really about to die? What's what I thought until I saw that one word? I want to live. Is there no way I'm dying here? My life is just getting started." In that moment, I chose to live. Without hesitation, I pressed the button. Yes. Then his eyes open inside the novel. He wakes up in shock. A lady standing in front of him, who was happy that Chris Doden woken up. Chris Doden was surprised to see the things around him, and he thinks, "Huh? Why can't I see the message window?" When Chris Doden heard his name from that lady, he was surprised. When a lady gives Chris Doden his ID card and says to him, "Yes, Mr. Chris Doden, here is your ID." Chris Doden looks at his ID card, and it is written in it that he is a new teacher? His name is Chris Doden, and he is also a teacher at Valdar Academy. Is there a new teacher at Valdar Academy? Why can't I read it? Today was supposed to be your first day. Why? The entrance ceremony has already been ended, but since it was a train accident, the academy will understand. Train accident? Then he says to the lady, "Excuse me, could I borrow a mirror?" The system window is opened in front of him. Main quest, the Earth gods wish 1-to-1. Welcome. You have been reincarnated as Chris Doden, new teacher at Valdar Academy. You will spend the next 3 years completing a quest as Chris Doden. Chris Doden thinks I've been reincarnated. No wonder those cheesy eye skylines feel natural. Valdar Academy. That's from the fantasy novel I used to read for fun. The Strongest Demon King Hero, the story of a weak protagonist who awakens as a demon bloodline heir, sweeping aside all enemies with cheat abilities, and ends with world domination and a harem. Classical. What was a while ago? I don't even remember how many chapters one read. Also, who is Chris Doden? Chris Doden is looking at the system window. A teacher must have disciples. Reach the front gate of Valdar Academy within the time limit? Reward map of Valdar Academy, April 1st, remaining time, midnight. Penalty death. Chris Doden gets a huge shock when he sees the penalty. And he punches the system window and says, "Penalty death? I just died, and now you're saying I'll die again if I fail. The lady is shocked as she cannot see the system window. Also, she cannot understand Chris Doden's problem, and she says, "Mr. Chris, you need rest." Wait, who are you yelling at? Next day, Chris Doden leaves for the academy, and he is mumbling on the way, and he says I forced her to discharge me early. But I'm still kind of sore. Also, starting out as a new teacher with barely any money sucks. Half my savings vanished at that clinic. So far, all I've figured out is that the currency is gold, and the academy is a half-day's walk from here. Also, who is Chris really? Still, I've always wanted to try this. Status window open, and Chris Doden starts looking at his status, fame, 0/shot in age, magic, S/human magic, crystal, strength, F/good condition, agility, F/like a snail, defense, F/like a wet sheet of paper. Skill. Illegal players cannot use skills. Chris Doden gets a little surprised and says, "What? 3 Fs and I can't use any skills? Okay, that's a one thing, but I can't use magic. And illegal? Did I reincarnate through a pirated version or something? This is bad, really bad. In this world setting, the only beings who can't use magic are monsters. And I'm supposed to be a teacher at the continent's top academy? This isn't just bad, it's a death sentence. Maybe I should run away? At this rate, my last words are gonna be, can't use magic, but I swear I'm not a monster." But Chris Doden looks at the remaining time, which is just 23 hours 52 minutes and 48 seconds remaining. And so he says, "I get it. Art, I don't have time for this. This is my second chance at life. The one bit of luck. My fame is listed as shut-in mage, and I do have experience. I once got reported in an online game for too realistic role-playing. That just means it was good. So, I'll play this as the mysterious, super powerful mage who never shows her true strength. For 3 years, I will survive by pretending I'm the real deal." Then we see the gate of the Welder Academy. A statue in the form of a monster key is guarding the gate, but he is getting very bored. And he thinks the entrance ceremony was a week ago, so no one's around. Then he feels something dangerous, due to which the stone statue starts sweating. When he looks ahead, he feels a dangerous aura which is coming from our protagonist. And he gets scared and he thinks, who's this guy? What immense magical power. Must be a teacher. I heard the new teacher got into a train accident. It's only natural for academy teachers to have monstrous power, but no. This is far beyond that. That scar on the forehead. Hair black as a wild beast's mane. Skin pale as moonlight, eyes sunken like midnight. This is death. Death itself in human form. Those red-black eyes have seen countless ends. There's a void behind him, a heavy emptiness. Chris Doden stops in front of the monster and says to him, to post a mere pebble like me at the gate. It's a disgrace to the academy. The monster was scared, but still he says to the protagonist, you there, state your name and purpose. The protagonist smiles and says, new teacher. Chris Doden, now open the gate. Then Chris Doden goes inside the academy. But he was very scared inside. And he says, phew, that was close. I seriously thought that was the end of me. Well, at least I made it on time. But hey, this character setup is actually kind of cool. I'll call it the totally unmotivated ultimate teacher. A deadbeat who naps in front of his students instead of teaching. But in truth, a battle-hardened, overwhelmingly powerful warrior. The kind of person who guides the protagonist with sharp, insightful advice. In his past, Chris lost someone dear to him because of his own mistake. He hit rock bottom until the headmaster of the academy appeared before him. That's how he ended up reluctantly coming here. The most important part of this backstory? He's traumatized and refuses to take on a disciple again. But he's also arrogant, believing weaknesses like you all aren't even worth teaching. If you want to see my magic, then get stronger first. This could work. Chris Doden is so engrossed in his thoughts that he does not even realize that blood is coming out from his wound. And seeing his blood, he gets surprised and says, don't tell me. Did the wound reopen from the accident? The moment I saw the blood, a wave of pain and dizziness hit me. Then only the system window opens in front of him again. Quest complete, you received the ALR Academy map for a /1. As a reward, Chris Doden gets angry and shouts, is this a joke? Forget the map, give me something to heal myself. And with this setting, I can't even run to the infirmary. Then only a student comes behind Chris Doden and asks him if he is all right. Chris Doden turns back and looks at the student, and the student further says you're bleeding from the forehead. Looks like you're hurt. Looking at the student, Chris Doden thinks that quest covering his check. This boy has a curse power. He's the protagonist of this story, Michael Foxon. He hasn't awakened yet, so his hair is still brown. Nervous and awkward, not a trace of the cheat level power he'll have later. Still, I can't let my guard down. Stick to the plan. Be the totally unmotivated ultimate teacher. Then Chris Doden says to Michael Foxon, "Why are you here? Last one still in session, isn't it? What's a new student doing here?" Michael Foxon gets a little nervous, but he says I couldn't keep up with class. So, the teacher told me not to come to the training grounds anymore. Chris Doden thinks, can't blame them. Right now, all Michael can probably manage is a basic fireball. The gap in skill between him and the others is obvious. Still, there's no excuse for a teacher to treat a student like that. Chris Doden says what a jerk. Michael Foxon gets scared after hearing this. He thinks that the protagonist used all this for him. So, his eyes get moist, and he says sorry to Chris Doden. But Chris Doden is shocked and he thinks, well, I wasn't even talking to you. Wait, are you crying? Then Chris Doden says to him, this is a hassle. What class are you in? At the same time he thinks this is bad. I need to get him back to his classroom, fast. Then again, the system window opens in front of him, main quest. The Earth Gods wish 2-1. Today is your thrilling first day, as the new homeroom teacher for Class 10 reached a classroom on time and conduct your first lesson. Reward Valbar Academy map for halves, monkey keychain penalty. Death time remaining, 9 minutes and 48 seconds. Chris Doden thinks, even with a map, it's not like I know where to go. And based on everything so far, this has got to be my class. Michael Foxon fearfully says, I am in Class 10. Please spare my life. Chris Doden says to him, lead the way. And Michael Foxon fearfully says yes. And Chris Doden looks at him with sharp eyes and he says, did I stutter? I said lead the way. And now Michael Foxon gets very scared. After some time, Chris Doden has lifted Michael Foxon in his lap and he is taking him to Class 5. Then he reaches the class and puts Michael Foxon down. Michael Foxon is very scared. And there are 2 students in front of him, and they both say, whoa Michael, don't freak out. Could you enter a room quietly for once? Geez, always trying to stand out. Just sit already. Just then Chris Doden enters the class. And then all the students feel something weird and everyone becomes silent. It seems as if silence has taken over the whole classroom. Then the protagonist goes to the front desk and he says to everyone that every last one of them is trash. This is the bunch I have to teach and guide. Valdar, have you lost your mind? Then the students start talking. Wait. Valdar, is that the name of the headmaster? Anyway, who is that guy? He's bleeding from his head. Then a student raises his hand and says, excuse me, but who are you? This area is off limits to unauthorized personnel. This student's name is Nika Tot. Class 10's honor student. Seeing Nika Tot, Chris Doden thinks, alright Nika. Michael's friend, if I remember. Then the protagonist tells his name as Chris Doden. Nika Tot further says right, you're the one who was late because of that accident. That's why you're bleeding. But Chris Doden asks him to be quiet. But he thinks, I just miss my timing, that's all. Don't talk about it, it's embarrassing. Okay, I made a strong entrance, but now I need to actually teach to clear the quest. In Reincarnation stories, you're supposed to start with preloaded knowledge. Why do I know nothing? No choice then. Then Chris Doden gets up from a square and writes something on the blackboard. And he wrote, self-study. And he thinks, I'll wing it with the right attitude. Michael Foxon gets surprised when he sees that Chris Doden is telling them that now they will have to do self-study. And Chris Doden lies down comfortably on the chair and he starts sleeping. At the same time he thinks, this is so pathetic it's embarrassing. But this is when I have to be bold. Act like, you aren't even worth explaining things to. Some students say, did he just fall asleep? Right there? He really went with self-study on the first day. That's insane. Chris Doden totally agrees. Is this even going to count as a lesson? Just then a girl stands up and shouts, Mr. Chris, if this is a joke, please stop. This is a terrible taste. You didn't even show up at the entrance ceremony. How dare you insult the sacred education of Valar Academy? On hearing the girl's voice, Chris Doden understands that her name is Angelina, who is a possible heroine candidate. And Chris Doden thinks, Angelina Sharif. One of the heroine candidates. They called her the Ice Princess, if I recall. And on the surface she's a duke's daughter. On the surface anyway. Most of the students here are nobles. Still I get it. This must be unbearable for her. It might cause problems later. But as Chris right now, this is all I can say. I know about Angelina's tragic past. It stings a little. But then Chris Doden tells Angelina in a stern voice, if you're unhappy, then leave. And Angelina gets shocked in hearing this. And Chris Doden further says, you didn't hear me? I said if you're not satisfied, then get lost, Angelina Sharif. But Chris Doden thinks, I'm so sorry, Angelina. But Angelina says to Chris Doden, what did you just say? So Chris Doden says, don't make me repeat myself. If you don't like my class, get out. But he thinks, sorry Angelina. Forgive me for being the kind of teacher who can only say things like this to a previous student. Angelina starts grinding her teeth in anger. Then she says, I have no interest in learning anything from someone like you. Michael Foxon tries to stop her, and he says, Angelina. But leading the classroom over this. But Angelina says to him, with your ability, I doubt you'd keep up with any lesson anyway. And I don't have time to waste on some worthless teacher. Listening to Angelina's words, many other students also start leaving the classroom. And Chris Doden is watching his students leaving and he thinks, Dad, I figured this would happen. They're all proud nobles, after all. I wonder how many will even stick around in the end. I braced myself for this, but still. If I get fired, what then? All I can do is trust the headmaster to have my back. Then the system window opens, quest cleared. You reasoned. Map of Val or Academy 2/4. And, monkey keychain. As rewards, Chris Doden thinks, for now I survived. Oh? It just happens that only the main characters are left. The protagonist Michael, the honor student Nika, and the potential hero in surrounding the main character. The twin-tailed girl is Dolce. The other girl is Belle, the healing type support. And one more who's not here yet. I'll introduce her later. Now then, time to act like a real mentor and say something wise. Chris Doden stands up and says, teach magic half-heartedly and people die. Hearing Chris Doden's words, all the pending students' ears perk up. And they all get shocked. And Chris Doden says, that's why Val's Academy is a training ground for killers. Give a deadly weapon to someone who can't even control their own mana. And he won't be them who dies, it'll be someone else. Calling it an accident or mistake. That's just sugarcoating reality. Do you have the resolve to bear that responsibility? But all students become quiet. And no one says anything. Then Chris Doden starts leaving from there. After some time, Chris Doden comes out of the classroom and stands near a wall. And he starts laughing and he says, I think my lifespan just shortened by 10 years. Creating a character whose life depends on their performance really is a whole other level. I need to adjust to this reality. And fast. Oh right, that monkey keychain I got as a reward. What is this? Chris Doden has a small monkey keychain in his hand. And Chris Doden is happy seeing it. And he says, what the heck? It's adorable. I personally love it. But if Chris carries this around, it'll totally ruin the vibe. I wonder if it has any effects? Then suddenly the system window opens in front of him. And it says equip item. Monkey. Chin. Yes or no once equipped. It cannot be removed for 5 minutes, choose wisely. Chris Doden says, so I won't know the effect until I equip it. Alright, let's just check what it does. The system says you equipped monkey keychain. While equipped, your agility increases by 1 rank. From F snail to E big bro snail. And Chris Doden becomes happy seeing this and he says, an entire rank boosts to agility. This is a cheat item. As long as I hide it under my clothes, it's fine. Higher agility means better offense and dodging. The system further tells Homer. While equipped or speech will end with key. Example. The system is truly generous key. Chris Doden gets surprised on listening to the system's words. But he controls himself and says what? Did you just say are you implying I'm a monkey? And Chris will never talk like that. A girl is watching all these actions of Chris Doden from behind and she gets a bit surprised. Then she takes Chris Doden's name. And when Chris Doden turns back and looks, she is standing there. And he asks Chris Doden, why are you here? Then Angelina is unable to move, she stops. And Chris Doden thinks crap. I should have used a stealth spell. Angelina thinks the moment those Reaper-like eyes locked onto me. My mouth opened on reflex. There's no way any excuse would work on this person. Not even the Duke Sharif, family name. I know her type well. People who trust only in their own power and disregard everyone else, arrogant geniuses. That scornful gaze, I've seen it more than enough to last a lifetime. What now? You're not going to check my pockets, restrain me, or stop me from running. Is this what they call silent pressure? Then Angelina says, you saw, didn't you? That I was smoking. I won't deny it. I know it was wrong. I'm sorry. I'll accept whatever punishment is due. Angelina thinks, maybe it's good that he caught me. There's no way he'd let it slide anyway. Even if it hurts my reputation, if he tells me, you're unfit to inherit anything, and rejects me outright, then maybe I can finally give everything up and just be free. Chris Doden touches Angelina's forehead with his finger and says to her, pathetic kidkey. Angelina thinks, why age? What does that mean? That look. It wasn't scolding or furious. It was like someone who had seen another suffer and meet a tragic end, just like them. Trying to numb the pain through reckless behavior is foolish and short-sighted. Key. No matter how powerful you are, you can redo the past. That regret. That way of seeing echoes of the past in similar moments now. You're just like me. You're human too. So you weren't just some tyrannical generalists after all. Then Chris Doden starts leaving. And Angelina gets surprised when she sees a monkey keychain near Chris Doden. And she thinks that monkey doll doesn't match your appearance at all. You must have gotten it from someone important, or maybe it's a memento. I'm sorry for reminding you of something painful. And for acting out of line despite being such an amateur. But Chris Doden thinks, by the way, enforcing a no-smoking rule on campus doesn't fit your character at all, right? Wait, was she able to tell my speech turned into tea after some time? Angelina comes back to her classroom and sits down. Chris Doden is surprised to see Angelina that Angelina is back. And Angelina says that's, don't misunderstand. I was just curious about Belfrage's healing magic. That's all. And Nikita gets excited and he says, so X-Class now has me, Nikita, Michael, Dolce, Belle, and Angelina. That makes 5. It's like a small elite unit. So cool. And Chris Doden thinks, well, the rest of the students all requested transfers out of this class. Dolce says, I wanted to show those useless extras what we're made of, right, Michael? Chris Doden thinks, as expected, of Dolce, a real little devil type heroine. And Belle says, Dolce, don't tease, Michael. The teacher is about to explain today's lesson. Face forward. Professor, what will we be doing today? Chris Doden says, well, I guess it's finally time for a real lesson. If I could avoid it, I would. Then he says to the student, today's lesson is field training. And the system says to Chris Doden, main quest, one of the Earth God, 1 to 3, first real tracking mission. Take the X-Class students to Venice Plains and slay monsters. Complete all objectives within the time limit. Reward. Map of Val d'Ird, 3/4, rusted sword penalty. You already know, right? Monsters defeated 0 out of 50. Time remaining, 24 hours. Here's some time. We see the beautiful place. Then a teleportation formation opens and Chris Doden and his students come out from it. And Angelina says to Venice Plains. So this is where the field training will take place. Nika Todd is excited. And he looks at Chris Doden with shining eyes and he says, wow, Professor. We haven't even been given weapons yet. And you're already using teleportation magic? The Chris Doden thinks, no, that wasn't me. We were just in the classroom. And the next thing I know, we were here. What's going on? Spatial magic isn't something students can use. And then Dolce looks at Chris Doden's head and she says, wait, there's a shadow over Professor's head. And the students think, that must mean we were summoned here by someone else. That's a horn rabbit. There are horn rabbits behind Chris Doden. An assistant tells Chris Doden, teleportation by an unknown party confirmed. You have arrived at the designated location. And Chris Doden thinks, we were brought here by a third party. Dolce shouts, it's a horn rabbit. Angelina says, Professor, there's a boss monster right behind you. Chris Doden looks back in fear and thinks, am I going to die? The system tells Chris Doden that the remaining time is 23 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds left. Until now he had not hunted even one of the 50 monsters. And there are 2 dangerous monsters in front of Chris Doden, as well as the boss monster. And Chris Doden thinks, get a grip. Right now I'm Chris Doden. What would he do in this situation? To him, this kind of thing wouldn't even count as playtime. He probably used it as a chance to test the students. Then Chris Doden shouts and says to the students, "You fools. Have you already forgotten why we're here?" Angelina says, "What, you can't be serious. You expect us to train in this situation? Do you even know what's behind us?" But Nika Todd is excited and says, "I'll get it now." Angelina, that must mean Professor will handle the boss himself. He just had to take care of the smaller ones. Chris Doden gets happy and thinks, what a model student. He just saved my character with that perfect interpretation. Dolce says, "That's so we're just on minion clean to do?" And Angelina looks at Chris Doden with scared eyes, but she says, "That I understand. You must have a plan. I believe you wouldn't knowingly put us in danger." And Angelina takes out her spear and stands in a fighting posture. And she moves forward and starts attacking the monster. And seeing this, Belle says, "Leave support to me. If anyone gets hurt, I'll heal you right away." Michael Foxon starts gathering fire in his hands to use his fire magic. Chris Doden is happy to see Michael Foxon's fire magic, and he thinks, "Great job, everyone." As expected of the story's main cast and their companions, this is going smoothly. Slowly, all the students together start killing the monsters, and slowly the number of monsters killed is increasing. But then the monster saliva drops on Chris Doden's shoulder, feeling which Chris Doden is shocked. When he turns back, there is a three-horned rabbit in front of him, and Chris Doden gets a little scared after seeing it, and he thinks, "That right, I forgot that guy was here. Honestly, I'd rather pass out before I even feel the pain. No, it's too soon to give up. Even if I get eaten, there's still a chance I survive. If I fail this quest, I'll definitely die, so it's smarter to choose the first option instead." Then Michael Foxon sees that Chris Doden has been attacked by Boss Monster and eaten. And seeing this, Michael Foxon gets a big shock and he starts running to save Chris Doden. But he thinks, right before my eyes, someone died. Again, is it because I'm weak? Because I'm a failure, who can't even defeat a single monster? Is this my fault? Just then Belle goes and stops Chris Doden, and tries to make him understand. But Michael Foxon says, "Let go of me, Belle. Professor's still over there." But Belle says it's already too late. Professor sacrificed himself for us. Monsters that size get sluggish once they're full. But Michael Foxon says, "No, you're wrong. Belle, you're good at healing magic, right? With your power, maybe we can still save him." But Belle says, "I'm sorry, Michael." And Michael Foxon starts remembering his old memories when he had stopped Chris Doden. And he had told him, I know I have no right to say this. Booty want to be stronger. I want to be strong enough to take on all responsibility on my own. If I can do that, I'll do whatever it takes." Michael Foxon thinks, he's going to laugh at me again, right? Then Chris Doden smiles and he had told Michael Foxon at that time, "You will become strong, Michael." Michael Foxon remembers all these things and says he was the only one who ever said that to me. No one else ever believed in Dulce shouts. "Let's just fight our way out of here ourselves. It'd be faster than waiting around." And Michael Foxon thinks that's why I want to give everything I have today. People like all of you are what it means to be strong. I'm just a burden. I should have been the one eaten instead. Michael Foxon is lost in his own thoughts and is not listening to Belle's words. Tears are falling from his eyes and he is thinking it wasn't Professor or Mom who should have died. Then the demon inside him says it should have been. "You want power, don't you, Michael? Then take my hand. Let us become one." It was me. And the demon inside Michael Foxon was about to control Michael Foxon's intellect. Then Michael Foxon stops and he hears someone's voice. And someone says, "Everyone stop." And the protagonist appears in front of them, covered in blood. He has killed the boss monster and asks, "Why are you running? Can't you see the monster still swarming around us?" Chris Doden and his students have killed 27 out of 50 monsters so far. The quest is already half completed. Nikki gets happy to see Chris alive and says as expected, "Professor, you're alive. Did you let yourself get eaten on purpose to attack from the inside?" Chris thought, "No way. Thanks for interpreting it like that though." Then he said, "You're noisy. I told you today was your field training, did not I? You forgot your objective and tried to run away." When listening to Chris's words, Nikki again goes ahead to fight with the rabbit monster and he says, "I'm sorry, I'll return to training right away." Belle tells him, "Nika Sam, it's dangerous to go back alone." Then Dolce says, Professor, even if those idiots manage to get through that, my eyes won't miss a thing, you know. I'll find out what you're plotting sooner or later, so look forward to it, okay? On listening to Dolce's words, Chris thought, yep. This kid is definitely my top threat. Scary. Scary. I wish I could switch classes. Seeing Chris safe and sound, Michael and Angelina have tears in their eyes. But Chris is a little confused as to why they are getting so emotional. Anyway, seeing them both, Chris thought, are they crying because of me? What kind of protagonist is this girl? And she still hasn't fully awakened. Angelina said honestly, is it really necessary to go that far? Even after you were eaten, we kept fighting without giving up. I thought this was a kind of test. But if you had the power to defeat it in one hit, you should have done it from the start. That was way too dangerous for just the performance. Chris thought, what should I do? They're misunderstanding everything, but I don't really feel like explaining. Because by eating me, who possessed S-rank magic power, that monster, its stomach just burst from overeating. Then he said to both of them, I believe I said if you're unhappy with my methods then leave. Also he thought, anyway, let's calm them down and get them back to training. Angelina said, I doubt we'll never make the same mistake again. Michael said crying, I am sorry. Please don't abandon me, Professor. Chris thought, I'm kind of feeling guilty now. Chris said, then you all get going too. At the same time he thought, I really do want to explain everything properly. But every living being in this world possesses magic power. Among them, monsters are born with relatively little magic power, so they have no choice but to absorb it from other life forms. The human species in particular, which holds overwhelming amounts of magic power, is often targeted by monsters. Magic power, as human magic crystal. However, all I have is an overwhelming amount of magic power. In other words to them, I'm the ultimate dish, premium foie gras topped with caviar. But what happens if you try to stuff a watermelon into a small plastic bag? Magic power that exceeds capacity can't be absorbed and just bursts the container. Well, I didn't really think it would go that smooth. Anyway, now that the boss is dead, the small fry would normally come after us. Dolce attacks the rabbit monster using water magic, while Angelina attacks the monsters using birth magic and freezes them. Chris is shocked to see their power level and thinks, but these kids are perfectly in sync. Even without being taught anything, it looks like I don't need to worry. In that case, at the very least, I need to be able to protect myself. This uses monkey keychain, item monkey keychain equipped. While equipped, agility increases by 1 rank. F snail to big bro E snail. Chris is about to fight the rabbit monster and he thinks, I probably won't need to give the students any more orders, so I'll boost my agility here. But the rabbit monster has more agility than him and Chris barely dodges the punch. But he still gets a little injured and his heart is pounding and he thinks, hi. If I were still F rank, half my cheek would have been gone. I'm not on Paw Man, you know. The other students are easily killing the rabbit monsters and so far they have defeated 49 out of 50, and Dolce smiles and says, I'm so sorry, I thought I got them all, but it looks like one slipped through. Someone is watching them all from a distance, and he is sitting on top of a dragon, and he says, I can't believe it. I thought it was just a possibility, but it's really Chris, isn't it? Seeing him, Chris thought, who is this guy? He totally looks like he's screaming, on the mastermind with that appearance, wait a second. Could he be the one who teleported us here? The man comes down and says to Chris, where have you been and what have you been doing all this time? How long has it been since I last saw that beautiful face? Do you know how much I've wanted to see you? Chris is a little confused, he thought, wasn't he wearing a hood to hide his identity? And what's his relationship with Chris? That's the look of a maiden in love. Chris tries to remember who is the man standing in front of him. His students are also surprised, and they also want to know who that man is. Chris thought, you've got it all wrong, everyone. I seriously have no idea who this guy is. The man says, what's the matter? Aren't you happy to see me? If you're still mad about what happened back then, I'm sorry. Chris thought, what are you talking about? And where did Chris even meet this guy? Ah, no good. I have to pretend to be Chris for now. Michael calls Chris from behind, but Chris does not reply. When Michael sees Chris a serious face, they become a little cautious, and they think that man is dangerous. It's the first time I've seen a professor be so cautious. Michael thought, on top of that, he commands monsters like they're his own children. He'd be the one who unleashed the rampaging horn rabbit. And the man said, I thought someone had killed my precious darlings, but to think it was Chris. Michael thought, if it weren't for the professor, I'd have been killed without a word. The man said the master said he wanted to check on the young master's progress. I was thinking about killing one of his friends right in front of him, but I never expected you to show up. Try to see things from my perspective too, okay? This is students get scared after hearing the man's words, but Chris asks them to remain calm. And the man further says, you're the one who ruined my mission. So why have you been quiet all this time? Well, I guess making excuses wouldn't suit you anyway. Michael thinks, Professor, despite having such a face full of murderous intent, why do you just accept it without fighting back? Could it be because we're here? You can tell how furious that person is just from their aura alone. It's difficult even for Professor to defeat that person while protecting us. It's frustrating. I'm still nothing but a burden to the Professor. With my current power, I can only manage to finish off monsters that are already near death. Then the man says to Michael, you're just following the master's orders too, so I won't get in your way. But if you smiled and said, good job, to me, it would lift my spirits. Michael thinks, but that person also seems to care deeply about the Professor. No, but look at Professor's eyes. This is just his selfish form of courtship. The man says, if it's difficult, I'll set things up for you. You've always praised my face for being beautiful, after all. But then Chris summons the sword and points it at the man's neck. Because of which the man gets surprised. Michael was nervous because Chris took action and placed the sword on the neck of that stranger. And he tries to understand what just happened. And he thought, what just happened? Where did that sword even come from? There are only a handful of people on the continent who can wield creation magic. But if it's Professor Chris, maybe it's not impossible. Then Chris said to the stranger, what nonsense have you been spouting all this time? Talk in your sleep, you trash. The stranger gets a little nervous, but he says, so you're still holding a grudge about that, huh? Chris smiled, but inside he was nervous, and he thinks that I am saved. It's thanks to the protagonist defeating the 50th one. I can't tell you how much I wish for it in my heart. I was praying that even just one of those lying on the ground would be finished off. A little while ago, Michael was disappointed that his power level is not equal to Chris and that stranger. So he was sad, but he did the right thing by killing a monster. Due to which the task which Chris got from the system of defeating 50 monsters was completed. Due to which Chris got a reward from the system, and the system tells him, as a reward, you have obtained Map of Vidal Academy, 3/4, and Ancient Sword. Remove the monkey key holder, and equip the rusty sword. And as soon as Chris gets the ancient sword, he asks the system to equip it quickly. And the rusty sword gets equipped. That is why Chris had the rusty sword in his hand, and he placed the sword on the throat of that stranger. And the system tells him about the rusty sword, which can cut through most things usable durability. 3/3, Chris says thanks to Michael and he thought, thanks to him, I somehow managed to protect both my life and my dignity. Well done, Michael. Then the stranger said to Chris, doesn't seem like you're in the mood to talk today, so I'll come back another time. If you ever need help, you can always contact me through the master. But Chris said to him in harsh words, if you don't want your mouth torn open, then disappear already. But he thought, I'm really glad you quietly backed off. Then the stranger goes away from there. After he left Chris, Michael looked at the students, and all the students were scared. Dolce said, man, I seriously couldn't even breathe. I ran out of mana. He'll ask if she is okay, but Chris does not answer him. He tells Angelina, send a messenger to the Angelina Academy. Tell them we need a carriage for our return. Angelina said, understood. In that case, I wish we had called for reinforcements sooner. But Dolce said, if only the teacher used spatial magic, it would have been over in a flash. Chris did not answer Dolce's question. Instead, Michael said, Miss Dolce is just tired, and maybe she wants some time to think about things. Hearing Michael's answer, tears came in Chris's eyes and he thought, I'm really glad you were here today, Michael. Then, all members of Class 10 returned safely. The next day, Chris is completing his daily routine, but he thought, starting off hard. What kind of life has Chris lived up to now? I thought about it on the way back, that bandaged guy is probably the character named Maria, but there aren't many who can create chimeras or control monsters. There was no visual description of them in the original story. Being followed by someone that obviously shady, I can only sense trouble coming. What Chris had thought happens exactly like that. There is a man in front of him, seeing whom Chris is confused. By the way, this character's name is Eugene, who is the homeroom teacher of Class Y. He said hello to Chris and said, "You haven't had lunch yet, right? I did not see you in the cafeteria." Chris thought, looking at Eugene. All right. Him too. What happened during this field training was so abnormal that the students of Class 10 were summoned immediately by the principal. However, for some reason, the principal's decision was to reinforce the defense magic circle and to impose a gag order regarding the incident. And also, one person was assigned to monitor me. It's this narrow-eyed teacher. The principal probably realized the person who approached me was part of the Demon Lord's army. And since there's a chance I'm colluding with him, he assigned this guy to watch me, over a decade ago. The Demon King was defeated by the Holy Emperor and is believed to have vanished from this world. But just like in every fantasy cliché, he's been lurking in the shadows, scheming his resurrection. The protagonist holds himself back and takes revenge on them. That's the premise behind the strongest Demon King hero in this story. I'm in a tricky position, caught between the principal, who's on the Holy Emperor's side, and the Demon Lord's army. If I get on this guy's radar, I'm seriously screwed. Eugene asked Chris, "What do you say? Want to have lunch together?" But Chris said, "You've been babbling non-stop. You're such an eyesore, so disappear already." Eugene said, "I see, was my voice too loud? Then, how about this volume? I actually get told a lot that I have a nice voice." Seeing Eugene's weird antics, Chris gets very angry inside, but he controls his anger and thinks, is this guy a pervert too? Everyone around me likes this or what? And Chris said to Eugene in harsh words, "I said shut that mouth of yours." Eugene laughed at Chris's words and said, "Well, that would be difficult. But if you were to cover them with your own hands, teacher." Chris said, "Shove your own fist in your mouth?" Then Chris gets a new quest by the system. Wish of the Earth God 1-4. Building relationships with fellow teachers is also important. Try inviting a fellow teacher to hold a join class. Rewards 1. Map of Vidal Academy for 4ths 2. Rod and Mandragor are root, asterisk if you fail, you die. Remaining time, 48 hours if you die. Chris thought, they're not trying to hide their malice anymore. Do it or die is basically the default now. At this point, I have no choice but to use this guy at this point. He is the homeroom teacher of neighboring Class Y. He has the most students who have transferred from Class 10. How do I bring up something like that while staying in character? It's not like I'm a sundry character. No wait, is the quest to hold a joint class, but it doesn't say we have to become friends. In that case, there is no need to force myself to act nice. Chris said to Eugene with a serious face, "Hey you? Because of you, I wasted 5 whole minutes of your time. I'd love to make you pay for that right now, but may my master come to love many more things?" If that happened, the child would end up sad. Chris felt a little cringy while saying all this and thinking, ugh. Even though I make this backstory myself, it's so painfully cringy. Chris continued and said, "If you want to get close to me, let's have a match. The trash you were teaching and the scum I raised? Who is better?" At the same time he thought, of course he wouldn't refuse. The principal ordered him to approach me and to extract information that altered all? Eugene asked, "Do you mean a match between our students?" Chris said, "If I win, don't ever show your face in front of you again." Eugene thought for a while and then said yes. And smilingly said, "You come up with surprisingly fun ideas. If I win, will you treat me to a meal?" Chris thought, why is he obsessed with food? It's a mystery. When Eugene said there's no chance he'll win, Eugene said, "Well, fine. It sounds fun. When should we do it?" Then Chris says, "Tomorrow afternoon." Eugene said, "Got it. Then see you tomorrow?" Chris turns back and starts leaving, but he thinks the outcome does not matter. As long as we can hold joint class, that's enough. I'm a nerdy character. But honestly, with all the nerdy characters in Class 10, I don't really think we'll lose. But someone was secretly listening to their conversation. And we see that it is Nika. Is it true that Nika has heard their conversation and he says, "Teacher, are you having us compete against another class because you believe in us?" That's it for today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome manhwa content.